Hello creative people, I'm Linda Ann Smith back with another color art design team project. My substrate that I'm using today is a protective cover for electronic devices that I found at the local dollar store. I covered the area I was going to paint with clear gesso and then flat craft acrylic paint in black. I combined Primary Elements artist pigments with Primary Elements clear gloss medium and also used silk acrylic glazes. Those last three items are available at colorart.com and give you a deep, rich metallic finish. As I mentioned before, I used clear gesso to cover the area that I was going to paint, but I did not like the chalky effect that it gave my cover. Here it is back and front, and you might be able to see it better on this other one that I have. See the areas where I painted? It's more gray. And I wanted the black background. I don't like this gray. So I'm just going to take a cheap acrylic basic paint. You don't need anything fancy. And I'm going to go over that grayish gessoed area before I begin painting the design. I have cardboard inside of this while I'm painting so that this won't leak through and perhaps stick to the other side and not make an opening for my iPad. I'm not sure that was really necessary because nothing seemed to leak through, but I feel like it's better safe than sorry. So I'm going ahead, I'm covering all of the gessoed area with this black acrylic paint and using a big brush to do that seems to be the best way to approach it. I did notice that if you push too hard on this surface that you're going to stretch it, so I had to be just a little bit careful, no big thing. This very inexpensive case only cost $1 at the dollar store, of course, and every layer that I add to the outside is just going to strengthen it and make it a stronger, longer lasting item. This is the second one that I'm working on today, and while I'm in this mode, I like to work on several items at one time, but I like to make each one individual and original designs. My method of working on almost any art is usually experimental, and so that's what I'm doing today. I'm going to experiment on this one without the black acrylic on it. I'm just going to work on top of the gessoed surface, and I'm going to see what happens. I'm wondering if when I put the final coat of finish on it, if that will take away the gray. This is Primary Elements clear gloss medium from Color Art. I use it to mix with Primary Elements artist pigments. You can activate Primary Elements with any water soluble liquid, but I think this is appropriate for what I'm doing today. Here's some of my Primary Elements artist pigments, and they come packaged in a little jar. It's a powder. The silks are a liquid. Both of these paints go a long, long way because they have such pure pigment in them. This is one of my favorite colors, this Solar Gold. I use it a lot. So let's just begin this design with Solar Gold. I'm going to pull it back out some of my Primary Elements gloss medium. Put a little bit of that on a paper plate or a palette of your choice. I'm just going to use a small amount of this because a little bit goes a long way on these products. It's amazing how these last. So now I'm going to dip my brush into the primary pigments, pick up just a tiny bit of powder. Doesn't take much. Just this much is going to make a really, really rich color for me to paint with. Okay, I think I just want to make a disclaimer statement here. I do know how to paint other things besides feathers, but I've had requests for how to paint feathers, and they're so easy and so much fun to paint that I'm going to show you that again. But again, I can paint other things. Begin by painting a very slightly curved line along the center edge of where you want to place the feather, and then come to the sides and begin painting in the barbs. I'm going to come back to the edge over here and kind of make it a little more solid, but you notice that sometimes I skip areas because feathers will have little splits in them, and I go back over areas and repaint them. I like to paint these freehand, but there's nothing wrong with you drawing this first or using a pattern if you need to trace that onto your substrate before you begin. I began this feather approximately in the middle of my painting area because I want to come back later and put a feather on each side of it. I just kind of eyeball where I want it, and honestly sometimes that gets me in a little bit of trouble because it doesn't come out just like I wanted it to. So I'm picking up some more paint on the edge of the straight edge of my paintbrush, coming back in, going over some of the color. Wow, that looks cool. I like the way that's going on. And each stroke is showing little lines between, and I like that too. I might want to wait till it dries a little more so it'll pick up more of the color. Make each stroke a little narrower as you go towards the point of the feather. And all feathers don't need to be pointed either. Some are rounded on the ends, so keep that in mind. I think my main advice to anyone who's just starting to paint is just have fun with this. Don't fret over it. Let your own style shine through. You get in trouble when you try to copy someone else. Quite honestly, it's a challenge for me to paint on video because I'm at a different angle. So I'm going to turn my substrate around to make it easier for me to reach, because as I said, I'm at a different angle than I usually paint. I usually paint much closer to my body. And now I will start this side, leaving a bit of space between the former area where I made the line. You don't want to cover up that whole space because this is going to represent the quill area or the spine area of the feather that goes right down the middle. I want you also to notice that feathers aren't alike on both sides. One side could be small, the other side larger. So, my cardboard is kind of buckling up inside. I should have had one piece instead of a folded piece perhaps. But anyway, now I'm going to refine that little line. See, I'm not touching where the other line was. I'm getting closer to it as I come towards the point. I can also go over and enhance these colors. Gee, I like this solar gold. I have the flap of this cover stretched out where you can see it at the bottom of the page there. That's the Velcroed area that comes down around the device that you put inside. I'm not going to paint too much in that area right now. I may go back and do something with it later. But for now I'm trying to paint this first feather in the area that will be mostly centered when you have the case closed. So I'm just adding a few extra flecks of paint here and there. Really like the way this looks, and it'll look even better when it dries. I'm so impatient at times. Sometimes I just can't wait for things to dry so I can go back and do what I want to. That's the reason I work on multiple items at a time, because that gives me drying time while I'm still working on something else. Pretty happy with the way this turned out and the way it looks right now, except I've got a few little specks on the outside where I didn't really want any of the gold. So that's not a problem. When this is all dry, I'll just take some of the black paint and touch that area up. No problem, it will disappear. For the second feather, I'm switching to Silks Glazes for no apparent reason except that's what I happen to have on hand. I don't have to mix the silks with anything. I can just use it straight out of the jar. I usually shake the jar before I start, but I'm going to put this feather in behind the other feather. So it'll be tucked in, give it a little bit of perspective to my painting. All you have to do is think about what it would look like if this gold feather were laying on top of another one. And again, as I said, if you want to draw a pattern on there before you begin, then by all means do that. A lot of times I'll take the handle of my paintbrush and draw an area for the center of the feather, which I've done here. Now I'm coming over to the edge so that it looks like part of this is up behind the other feather. And I'm going to make that same line down the center that I did on the first feather to form the area for the quill. I'm being very careful to paint up to the edge of the gold feather, but trying not to overlap. Now notice that you paint in the same direction that the barbs grow again, right up to that line that I made and right up to the edge of the gold feather as much as possible. I think I need to place my painting a little higher on my table so that it'll be easier to see. Really like the way these colors look together. I'm turning it around so it's more accessible for me to paint. Now I come in right beside that other, leaving that space in the center so that it forms the quill line of the feather, right to the point, getting narrower. Again, feathers aren't alike on both sides. Most things in nature are not exactly symmetrical. Now painting in the direction of the barbs. I think this needs a little touching up right in this area, so I'll work on that. Okay, painting in the direction of the barbs. I'm just dipping into my jar of paint. I didn't put it on a palette or anything this time. And I like the way these little areas make that little highlight to make it look like the barbs of the feathers are showing. This paint dries really fast, so it's probably okay for me to go back now and touch up some areas and highlight some areas on the area where I painted before. Get these painted in a little better here, a little more even out the edge of the feather. Just a little down to the tip. The more this dries, the more metallic in color it becomes, and I am just loving the way this teal zircon looks with the solar gold. That's really beautiful. I usually don't paint just two things. I like things in odd numbers. Odd numbers seem to look better. I think most of you have already heard that before. But I want 3 feathers on this instead of 2, so now I'm trying to decide what color of feather to put on the other side of the gold center feather. And I'm thinking over the yellows. I have Sunburst and Lemon Drop in my Silks acrylic glazes, and I think I'll go with Sunburst. I'm actually not going to worry about thoroughly cleaning my paintbrush. I'm going to clean it a little bit here, but if I have a little residue of that teal zircon left in my brush, then that's going to give it the lemon or the Sunburst kind of a greenish appearance, and I think that'll look good on the other side. If you remember your color theory from grade school, yellow and blue make green, so there should be just a tinge of green into this. I've decided to paint it on this side of the blue feather, again getting the perspective overlapping just a little bit, letting that blue feather look like it's a little bit on top of this one. I'm painting it with the same method I did the others. Putting in the straight line first, then painting the barbs. Coming back on the other side later, I'll paint in, I'll leave that little line down the center, and then I'll paint the barbs in the other direction. Now I have plans for the top of it up here, so I'm not quite finished yet. I don't worry about getting that exact right now. Just paint in these little strokes, get my barbs going. Smaller strokes as I get down towards the point. And I'm going to point that just a little bit more. Okay, you should always turn the canvas or object that you're working on in the direction that makes it most comfortable for you to work, and it's easiest for me to pull these barbs toward me and pull the strokes toward me. So that's where I'm going with this. My kids at school used to say, "Oh, Miss Smith, you got my painting upside down," and I would compliment them and I would say, you know, that's just such a huge compliment because compositions should work in all directions. Sometimes they looked at me like they didn't believe me, but I really meant it. Now, to make this composition work and to make it look like everything goes together, I'm taking some of the yellow that I used on the feather, and I was right, it turned out with a little greenish tint. But I'm taking some of the pure yellow sunburst and putting it on top of the gold feather. Just touches, just a highlight. I'm not going to do the whole feather. Quite often you'll see artists use this same method in their paintings. If there's a sky with a little pink in it, they will make sure that some pink reflects on the ground, or some pink reflects on rocks or water or something that's on the ground, just to make that feel like it all goes together. I wanted three entirely different feathers, but I want them to feel like one whole picture. Look at that shimmer from those color art paints, and we're not even dry yet. The shimmer just gets better and better as the product dries. Now I'm going to come up here and work on this area because this is pretty dry up here. I'm ready to do something to that area to enhance it a little more. I dip back into my teal zircon, and I'm just starting at the center and just pulling out, dragging out the paint. This is the down or the fluff at the top of the feathers, and it just is a good design element. You can actually go easier than I started here, probably by starting with an X and then a cross over the top of that X and then crossing in between those. Now I'm going to add this, what was the color? Sunburst. I'm going to add some sunburst in, and I'm just bringing it right down over the feathers at the top so that it looks like they're all connected in some way. So I'll keep working this back and forth and make this little sunburst look at the top. As I said, it's supposed to represent the down at the top of the feathers. I'm fairly satisfied with the way that looks, so I'm going to go back down here and accent just a little more with this teal zircon that I have on my paintbrush. Kind of cleaning up some edges and adding a little tiny bit more sparkle. This dries so fast, so easy to work. I'm also going back with just a little bit of that flat black that I began with and adding some splits in this center feather to give it more interest. Just makes it a little more dynamic. I can come in from the edge, and I'm really liking the way this looks. I let everything dry, and when I folded it up to look like this, I noticed that it was off-centered, because remember, at first I was going to put a feather on each side of the first golden feather, and I changed my mind. Typical me. So I'm going in with chestnut brown Silks Acrylic Glaze, and I'm going to make some leather curlicues around this just to balance everything out. I usually put little leather strips on most of my feather paintings anyway, so this will look great. I used the handle end of my paintbrush to kind of sketch in where I wanted these, and now I'm painting over that line that I made with the paintbrush. And this will give a metallic color also. All of the Color Arts products are very metallic. They have the finest mica in them. I really love the way this Silk Acrylic Glaze flows, giving me nice long lines without having to re-dip too often. Very flowing. Give this a little curlicue tip. Looks real pretty with the straight edges that I have of the feathers, giving it a nice contrast. And I'm going to go back up into the center of the feather area and attach this line closer to the center so that it looks like it's attached to the feathers, like it's tying the feathers together, right here. Now again, that's 2, an even number, so I'm going to go to the other side and add another little curly Q to balance everything out. And here it is. All I'm going to do to finish it is add some clear acrylic sealer on the top of it to make sure that nothing runs or moves or is reactivated. And then I'll use a bronze Sharpie to sign my name, and I'm done. This is still a little damp with the acrylic sealer, but just a little note, as it dried, the chalkiness did begin to go away and I was happy with the results. When this is fully dry, I don't think anybody's going to guess that it was a dollar store item. It certainly looks richer and prettier than that. Remember I said that I work in multiples? Well, when I was working, I edited this out of the video, but here's one almost dry that I was working on. I'm afraid if I'd been working back and forth, it would have been confusing on the video as to what I was doing. Remember that ColorArt.com has a scavenger hunt twice a month, and you can check this out on their Facebook page. There are also free tutorials on the blog every day, so check it out. If you'd like to see more free art tutorials here, subscribe to my channel and give me a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.